Greetings, friends of the Missouri Mid-South Conference. I bring you greetings this morning from my apartment in St. Charles, where my cat Motor has graciously allowed me to film next to her her spot. She is in her other place. And I am bringing you greetings this morning or this afternoon as you're watching this, understanding that the month of January is a very busy time in the rhythm of the church calendar. There are congregational meetings, which I've mentioned before, that I actually really like because it gives the congregation as a whole, with the members and with the minister and with the leaders, the opportunity to have conversation about what's going on in the life of the church, the good, the challenge, where we're moving, and things like that. In the same way, I also want to share with you what I've been spending a lot of my time and energy for the month of January in doing, and I think it's a good practice in the local churches, and that is to have an evaluation, a job performance review for all of our staff. So for me, what I like to do is have a job description that begins when the employee, the staff person is hired. But I believe that job descriptions are meant to be dynamic. They're supposed to be the gauge from which we make sure that we're doing our job and we're not over-functioning or under-functioning. And if there are things that have changed in the life of our responsibilities, that job description captures it. And I will be including information with that in this e-courier. I also think it's important to have dialogue about what our goals were for a given year, where we didn't quite make it, or where we're still working on it, or things happened and changed, and how can we proceed and go further in a healthy way. As I reach out to a lot of our churches and receive requests, one of the similar patterns of requests is in the area of personnel committee. How do we relate to our pastor and to our staff in a way that is not micromanaging, which can be very controlling and rigid, but also in a way that has communication, both ways to say, where is it that we need to strengthen? Where is it that we need to celebrate in the life of the congregation, perhaps in a congregational meeting? And I have to be honest and say that I'm surprised sometimes at how many of our churches don't have a functioning personnel committee or a pastoral relations committee. And I would say that in terms of the staff, the pastor is always the supervisor of the staff. Just like for me as conference minister, I am the supervisor of all of our staff and all of our consultants. But we also need a personnel committee. And what that personnel committee does is make sure that our personnel handbook is up to date, and if there are any tweaks that need to be made, revisions that need to be made, if there are policies that need to be added or replaced or revised. But also the personnel committee offers that presence for all staff so that they know that they have another person if the relationship between the pastor or the conference minister and the staff person is not healthy. Now, I say that not to say that the personnel committee should be the triangle, oh, I don't really like my supervisor, so I'm going to bypass my supervisor and go to the personnel committee. That's not what I understand the personnel committee, their function to be. Instead, the personnel committee should be that presence, support for the pastor or conference minister, but also to be that presence so that the staff knows that they have someone who will hear their concerns if they have concerns that their working environment is not as healthy as it needs to be. Some people have asked, what's the difference between a personnel committee and a pastoral relations committee? And should the Pastoral Relations Committee be functioning like the Personnel Committee? And there is it runs the gamut in terms of what people believe and how they function. I would say that if you don't have either a Personnel Committee or a Pastoral Relations, make sure that you have a Personnel Committee in place. And make sure that that Personnel Committee is doing the functions of some kind of oversight. Again, not micromanaging, but at least a routine conversation with at least the pastor to say, how are things going? What strengths do you find in your ministry, in your church? And what challenges? And how can we support and help you and the staff to function as strongly as possible? The Pastoral Relations Committee is really for especially the pastor and the congregation. And the Pastoral Relations Committee is that bridge of communication between the church and the pastor. Now, sometimes what happens with the Pastoral Relations Committee is that it becomes again, another triangle, so that if a church member gets really upset because the pastor preached for 21 minutes when the pastor is only supposed to preach for 20 minutes, that the members sometimes will think, well, I don't have to go to the pastor, I'll just go to the Pastoral Relations Committee, and I don't want my name used. Everything across the board is, if there are going to be concerns raised, that they need to have their name. I am a huge advocate to say, unless a concern is brought to me with someone's name, so that I can then, in good Christ-like manner, go to that person and have conversation and work out any conflicts that may be there, then that concern does not merit the attention of myself and or the Personnel Committee, or in a church, a Pastoral Relations. The Pastoral Relations should not see themselves as the go-between in terms of telling the pastor. What I often counsel to churches and Pastoral Relations Committees is that their function is to provide that process by which church members know that when they have concerns, that their first stop is with the pastor, one-to-one, so that conversation can happen personally. But the Pastoral Relations Committee is also that space where the pastor can have some good dialogue with individuals whom she or he trusts, to talk about the help of the ministry of the church. So the Pastoral Relations is not to be the dumping ground on everything that they don't like about the pastor. The Pastoral Relations is to be the avenue, the bridge, the conduit by which healthy conversation can happen both from the congregation and the pastor. That there can be some conversation about, how is our ministry going? Is it healthy? Where are our strengths? Where are our challenges? Where are our barriers or hindrances or temptations? And how do we move towards healthy ministry together? In my local church, one of the things that my Pastoral Relations started doing was to hold events, usually a fellowship event, like an ice cream social, or something for folks to get to know who the Pastoral Relations Committee was, but also how they functioned in relationship to me as pastor and to the church, and how I functioned with the Pastoral Relations Committee as well. I often met with my Pastoral Relations Committee at least on an annual basis. My goal was trying to get it to a quarterly basis, just so that there was healthy ebb and flow between me and the Pastoral Relations Committee and the congregation. All of this is to say that it is better to have this structure and these processes in place when everything is going smoothly, rather than when conflict erupts and all of a sudden you don't have these things in place. And that's where I often am invited in, or when conflict that could have been shifted into healthy conversation and reconciliation could have happened either in a Pastoral Relations Committee or a Personnel Committee. So my hope is that pastors, that you will embrace job descriptions that are dynamic and help as a tool to gauge healthy ministry with all of our staff, as well as quarterly goals, and for a Pastoral Relations Committee that functions so that we can all work and strive towards healthy ministry together. Woohoo! So now that Motor has joined us, she says, have a wonderful day and enjoy the beauty of our ministry together in the Missouri Mid-South Conference. In the name of God who creates us, the Christ who teaches us to love, and the Holy Spirit that comes in beautiful and healthy ways. Amen.